Bernhard Walter is up early. The SS Sergeant Major has been ordered to attend a special detail due today, an action no outsider may ever know about. From his flat on the outskirts of Auschwitz, called Auschwitz by the Germans, it's only a few kilometers to his destination. Walter is driving into a bright, sunny day. At this hour, Crematory 3 in the concentration camp complex of Auschwitz-Birkenau is already running. The camp inmates have to rise between 4 and 5 a.m. Work begins at 6. For breakfast, there's only hot broth. For some, like Dario Gabai, there's a bit more. Gabai is part of a special command, the so-called Sonderkommando.
We was better than anything else. We didn't have bad, that's why we survived a lot, because we had enough food to survive and enough things, clean and everything else.
It's a tiny but vital bonus, yet it comes at a price. From the sleeping quarters under the roof, Gabai descends the few steps down to the incinerators. This is where the special commandos are working round the clock in 2 12-hour shifts starting at 6 a.m. After 7 days, the shifts are reversed. This has been going on for 10 days now. It's mid-May 1944, and there seems to be no end in sight. Train after train keeps coming in, and on this day too, new transports arrive at the camp.
The transport, is when the Hungarians were coming, was something that we never believed to. They were coming 15,000 a day. There were 500,000 people. It was bagging the mind, they were coming and coming.
On the 26th of May alone, 5 trains deliver 16,000 Hungarian Jews at Auschwitz. One of them is 13-year-old Irene.
The younger children, nothing was said to them. They were close to my mother on the floor, and the rest of us a little further. But we all understood that we are captive of a situation. We're helpless and hopeless here. And there is just such fear that, but the fear was so strong, and yet always thinking it can't be as bad as it looks. There's always some kind of hope.
The passengers have no idea where they're going, nor what awaits them. Things just had happened too fast. Europe in spring 1944. Germany and her satellites, among them Hungary, still control large parts of the continent. Yet the Allies are advancing on all fronts. The Red Army has reached the eastern borders of Hungary, whose leaders are thinking about switching sides. To counter that option, on March the 19th, 1944, the German army moves into Hungary. The country's 800,000-strong Jewish population is now at the mercy of the occupiers. The Nazis intend to annihilate them, just as they've been doing in other places within their reach. But at first, some 150,000 Hungarian Jews are to be exploited as slave laborers in the Reich's arms factories. The Jewish inhabitants of the Carpathian village of Batrad in today's Ukraine are among the first to be rounded up. People like Meyer Vogel, a timber merchant. He and his wife Leah, as well as their 6 children, must prepare to depart. At the end of May, a telegram informs the German Foreign Office in Berlin that as of today, 150,000 Jews from Carpathia and Transylvania have been dispatched to their destination. In Nazi parlance, destination equals Auschwitz. Among the deportees, rumors abound.
So I heard the grown-ups saying what we heard was that in Poland they gathered Jewish people into the forest, and there was a firing squad waiting for them, and they were literally mowed down and buried into mass graves. And we heard that, but we didn't believe it. My father kept watching the land outside, and he knew where the tracks were going, where the separation to various places. And so he did announce at one point that the train turned towards Poland. It was very soon after, a few minutes after, he could tell. And then there was absolute silence in the car.
On May the 26th, 1944, their train rolls into the camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The tracks have been specifically extended right into the camp complex for the handling of the additional transports from Hungary. There must be no hitches in the final solution.
My father looked out there, and when the train stopped, he looked out and he said, "This is not the forest, I see barracks, and I see prisoners in striped uniforms and some soldiers, but a lot of barracks, and it looks like it's a labor camp, it's a work camp." And people were suddenly relaxed. Everybody said, "Okay, if it's a labor camp," I heard the grown-ups saying, "Okay, so we can work, if that's what it is. Again, we'll work until the war is over, we'll work until this changes." Again, who could ever imagine what followed? No way, no way.
Immediately next to the ramp, the guardroom of the so-called Blockführers, SS men in charge of receiving the human cargo. A most suitable place for Bernhard Walter to park his motorbike. From here, it's only a few meters walk to the site of the events Walter has been ordered to record. Even at this early hour, everyone's busy at the ramp. A column of Jews from Hungary is about to be processed, as the SS calls it. In principle, taking photographs within the camp is strictly prohibited. Yet these days, Bernhard Walter operates his camera for all to see. His photos the only ones ever to show an extermination camp at work. Why is he entitled to do what others can't? Historian Stefan Hördler has been vexed by this question for years. He studied Walter's photographs and his biography extensively. What made Walter become the photographer of Auschwitz? Having been trained as a plasterer, he joined the party in the SS in May 1933. According to his handwritten CV in the SS personnel files, by then Walter was 22 years of age and had repeatedly been out of work.
Bernhard Walter is
a so-called Maybug, one of those who only joined the party after the Nazis had come to power, to become part of the system. It would be highly speculative to say that either he was a fervent believer or that he was a mere opportunist. Maybe he was both.
Bernhard Walter nicht nur kein Problem für das System tätig
At least he
zu sein,
didn't seem to
sondern
have had any problems serving the regime, since he continuously gave everything for the system, right up to 1945.
Ein Stück weit, in Anführungsstrichen, alles gegeben.
In 1934, Walter volunteers as a guard in Dachau, one of the first concentration camps. After the Nazis' accession to power, tens of thousands of opponents are arrested with a view to wiping out any resistance to the new regime. Over the years, Walter is posted to several other camps as the SS establishes ever new camps across the country. In January 1941, he reports for duty at Auschwitz in Upper Silesia, a former province of Poland that had been annexed by Germany after the Polish defeat 2 years before. In early 1940, the Germans convert a Polish army barracks near the town into a concentration camp. After 7 years with the SS, it's a familiar sight to Bernhard Walter. Even the inscription over the gate is the same as that of his first posting at Dachau. Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. At Auschwitz, he's entrusted with a special task. Having cracked his skull in a car accident, Walter is unfit for guard duty. Yet the SS stick to their old hands and retrains him as a photographer. At Auschwitz, he's assigned rooms in Block 26 and is charged with setting up the ID section and establishment of the so-called political branch in each camp. It's a pleasant posting. The inmates have to do most of the work. And there's another SS photographer subordinate to Walter. Their job is to photograph and to register all new prisoners. If one should manage to escape, his picture would be displayed all over the region. At first, the prime function of a concentration camp like Auschwitz is to intimidate the local populace. To that end, the Germans arbitrarily arrest members of the Polish elite to suppress any potential resistance, even if they are little more than children. At Auschwitz, Walter is promoted to Hauptscharführer, the second highest NCO rank within the SS, the equivalent of a sergeant major in the army. As head of the ID section, Walter enjoys special privileges. His wife and their 1-year-old son get permission to join him at the camp. The family soon grows. His wife gives birth to another boy and girl. It's all in line with the family-friendly approach of the SS.
Die zentralen Positionen,
The central people within the camp structure had their families with them, whenever it was feasible.
Familien am Standort. Und aus Sicht der SS war das immer ein beruhigendes
The
Element,
SS always
genau
considered
diesen
this as a
Privatrahmen
soothing
zu haben.
element,
Und dementsprechend diese
to have a
Balance
private backdrop with a view to balancing out what the files called hard service by relaxation at home.
Ausgleich im privaten Haus.
Bernhard Walter doesn't merely take shots of prisoners, but also of other SS men. As official camp photographer, he's present at outings and at parties. When there is an important event, Walter is accompanied by his number 2, SS Sergeant Ernst Hofmann, a former primary school teacher with an interest in photography. That's why Walter himself can be seen in a photograph of SS Chief Heinrich Himmler, taken during a visit at the camp in July 1942. The head of the SS has a special reason for coming to Auschwitz. Himmler wants to inspect a new camp still under construction, some 3 kilometers from the existing camp, which is now labeled a Stammlager, or main camp. The new site is near the village of Brzezinka, called Birkenau by the Germans. Auschwitz-Birkenau, or Auschwitz II, has a rectangular layout, just like an ancient Roman camp, with 2 intersecting main roads. They separate the barrack blocks where the inmates are penned up. Then, set up conveniently apart, there's the barracks for the guards. This is all quite familiar to Himmler. In fact, he's interested in something else. There's a former farmhouse at the periphery of the camp. Of the so-called White House, merely the foundations are left. Camp Commandant Rudolf Höss has had 4 airtight chambers installed in the building. He now demonstrates to his boss a new method for the systematic killing of Jews, which the regime has initiated the year before. Up until then, they were mostly shot. In the White House, they die by the discharging of a poisonous gas, Cyclone B. Himmler watches a demonstration of the gas chamber from beginning to end, together with his entourage. Among them must have been the men who took these photographs, Bernhard Walter and Ernst Hofmann. Himmler is impressed. What's more, Auschwitz is conveniently located close to several important railroad lines. And since other extermination camps such as Treblinka, Belzec and Sobibor have been given up in view of the approaching front lines, Auschwitz now becomes the main murder factory. That's why in May 1944, it becomes the destination of all Jews from Hungary. When the train carrying the Vogel family arrives on May the 26th, the SS in Auschwitz-Birkenau has been receiving such transports for nearly 2 years. Yet the influx of so many people in such a short space of time is an unprecedented sight, even for Bernhard Walter. More than 430,000 persons arrive in just 8 weeks. The so-called Hungarian Project is an event of such magnitude that Walter is expressly ordered to record it with his camera.
It can be assumed that these photographs were taken on the personal orders of Rudolf Höss. He had been the camp's commandant until November 1943, and he returned in May 1944 to take charge of this special operation. And of course he wanted it to be a success story and have himself portrayed as the expert in concentration camp administration.
The images shot by Walter during the last week of May seem to have been intended as a kind of performance record. Höss wants to commend himself to his commander-in-chief, Heinrich Himmler. The message, "I have everything under control."
Soon the door opened, and shouting, yelling, always, raus, raus, raus. And then leave everything behind. Don't take anything, leave everything behind. I remember it was still cold, and so my mother was very practical, and she was able to think. Even then, she told us all, put on more clothes, put on more, everybody, put on more clothes, whatever, in the few minutes. And so I had a very large coat, I put that on, I had the scarf on my head, and then we jumped out of the train and left everything else.
Yet things don't always run as smoothly as this photograph suggests. Eyewitnesses tell of scenes of chaos and brutality on the ramp. Bernhard Walter sees no use in images that might undermine the impression of a perfect processing of the deportees. On many photographs, the cluelessness of the arrivals is evident.
They were just glad to get out of this wagon, to get some fresh air and maybe see their relatives or some friends from the other cars again. So there is a kind of relief on their faces to have at last arrived somewhere, and that supposedly the ordeal of the journey was over.
Walter even climbs onto the roof of a train to get a good angle for his shots of what is coming next. The arrivals are split up into 4 columns. 2 on the east side of the ramp, looking towards the gate. The other 2 on the west side, looking into the opposite direction. All columns are adjusted around a central space, which remains unoccupied. Then the train is halved to enable access to Camp Road B. Next, the so-called selection begins by forcing forward women and children at the west side of the ramp. Irene Fogel recalls.
And so all that the crowd moved up, and we moved, and suddenly we were in front. And we were facing a dozen Nazi soldiers and dogs, and there was one who had a stick.
The SS men used their walking sticks to speed up the crowd. SS physicians select those considered able to work. People of old age, invalids and children are inherently classified as unfit for work.
My older sister, who was 17, she was waved this way, and she was off, because wherever you were told to go, many went. It was not just one person. It was 1, 2, 3, many went. And my mother and 2 little boys go this way, and she disappeared. And many went that way immediately. And then I was still part of the group, but I was holding my younger sister's hand. She was about 12. And then all of a sudden, the stick comes down between us.
The last photograph of Edith from Better Times.
And I'm being motioned to go where my older sister went, and she where my mother went. And this is when I stopped. I stopped on the side because I said, oh my God, my mother is long gone, and so many others went already. She's not gonna catch up.
After more than 30 years, Irene sees this photograph for the first time, believing this is her at that very moment.
Not at all. I was standing there just absolutely in terror. I was just so suddenly frightened for her. I suddenly realized that here, we had it in our head that it's a work camp, a labor camp. So far, it looks like it's a labor camp. Young people are separated, makes sense, they will work. Old people, mothers and children are separated. We will meet again. They'll be in some kind of a camp. But what will happen to Edith, my little sister? She's not going to be with us, because when we reunite, she will be lost. And, nobody asked our name, nobody asked who belongs to whom, and all of a sudden, I also thought, well, maybe I didn't hold on to her tight enough.
Children and their mothers are the first to die in Auschwitz. The SS would rather dispense with potential female workers than risk a tumult by forcefully separating mothers from their children. This morning, the photographer has captured everything he had intended to shoot at the ramp, so he proceeds to the next motif. For several days, the 2 photographers of Auschwitz cover those not considered fit to work on their final walk. It takes them north, along Camp Road B, away from the ramp, while Bernhard Walter and his number 2, Ernst Hoffmann, keep on focusing their cameras on elderly people, women, children. They seem worried, but not desperate. They don't know that these images will be the final testament of their existence. After 1.5 kilometers, Camp Road B leads into a small wood, still inside the camp fence. More photos intended to prove that there are no disturbances whatsoever. Do the photographers feel any pity for the children looking directly at them? Bernhard Walter is a father himself, a popular figure among his comrades, as this sketch from his Auschwitz days shows. It describes him as a man who cares for others and is quite the clown. An excellent companion and a great joker. How can such a man become a willing cog in the machinery of murder?
Bernhard Walter selbst ist bereits.
Bernhard Walter has served in concentration camps since 1934. So it's not the first time that he sees violence or murder being committed.
Oder Mord sieht. Das ist schwer vorstellbar.
It may be hard to imagine today, but for an SS man, this was everyday life.
Für diese SS-Männer zum Alltag gehörte.
Inhuman apart, there's ideology.
Among animals, rats represent the element of malicious subterranean destructiveness, no different to the Jews among men.
Als die Juden unter den Menschen.
For more than a decade, propaganda has fostered hatred towards Jews. What is in the mind of the ordinary SS man? Stefan Hödler has given evidence as an historical consultant at several trials. One of the accused was former SS NCO Oskar Gröning, who had a clerical job at Auschwitz. During an interview with the BBC, he talked freely about his time in the camp.
We were firmly convinced that we Germans had been betrayed by everyone around us, and that this was one great Jewish conspiracy against us.
But when it comes to children, don't you at least reach the point where you say, they can't have done anything to harm me? How do you cope with that?
The children, as such, aren't yet the enemy. The enemy is the blood within them. They may grow up into Jews who might prove dangerous. That's why the children are included.
In der Rassenideologie des Nationalsozialismus.
The conception of blood figures exorbitantly large within the Nazis' ideology of race.
Exorbitant wichtige Rolle. Klar, dass biologisch.
Of course, it's biologically impossible to distinguish between the blood of a Jew and that of a non-Jew. So they developed a kind of metaphysical superstructure, the idea of the soul of the race, which is carried on in the blood from generation to generation.
Trägt von Generation zu Generation, und wenn man, das ist die Perspektive.
From the Nazi perspective, it's therefore evident that if you want to extinguish Jewry as a whole, you must strike at the roots.
In allen ihren Wurzeln.
And that means the wholesale killing of men, women and children.
Das unterschiedslose Ermorden von Männern, Frauen und Kindern.
It's only a few steps out of the small wood to one of the 4 large gas chambers, which the SS have meanwhile put into place. What follows has never been recorded with a camera. The procedures within the new sites, called crematories 2 to 5, have been established right down to the last detail. First, the victims have to take off their clothes in an anteroom, allegedly to prepare for a shower. Rows of hooks on the wall are part of the deception. The victims are told to memorize the number of their hooks so they may find their clothes again. Men of the Special Commandos instruct them on what to do. Dario Gabay and his comrades are the last ones to see the doomed people alive. Why don't they warn them of what is coming?
We couldn't talk to them. We didn't want you talk to them, the German will kill you anyhow. So, no, but I think a lot of people weren't so stupid, you know. A lot of people, they knew that something funny was going on.
After that, they enter what is supposed to be the shower room. The shower heads on the ceiling are, however, fake. The main features of the room are the grilled cages, which lead up from the floor to a hatch in the ceiling. This is where Cyclone B will be thrown in. The room is about 230 square meters large. Some 1,600 people are herded in here at the same time. Once the door is closed, there's hardly room to move.
Then is where they start thinking that something else is going on here, because they didn't see there was no water, I mean, so there is where they got scared a little bit, and you see after they close the door, you hear the scratching of the walls.
An SS man pours in the Cyclone B. It's been developed to kill vermin. Once the granules are set free, lethal cyanide vapor begins to spread. The first symptom is an excruciating pain in the chest, followed by severe cramps comparable to an epileptic fit.
Das war ein Vorgang, der extrem qualvoll.
It was an extremely painful process.
Und dieser Prozess, der
Yet many SS members later used this as an excuse, saying that this way of killing was more humane than shooting the victims, which wouldn't guarantee that they would die at once.
Für die Opfer anders als Erschießung, wo man ja nicht sicherstellen kann, dass sie sofort tot sind und andere. Das sind natürlich.
Those are extremely cynical statements, almost malicious, which of course had nothing to do with reality.
Die nichts mit der Realität zu tun hatten.
The further away people stand from the insertion shafts, the longer their death struggle lasts.
Open the door, the capo at the end, it takes 30 minutes, and then it open up the door. This is where everybody, if you are a human being, is where something start working on you. You see people that you saw about 30 minutes ago, alive and everything else, all of a sudden they're all down, with black and blue from the gas, and they're all tangled up. We had hard time, the people to start taking them out, to put into the ovens, to go upstairs.
Next to the gas chambers are the ovens, where the bodies are incinerated. It's all in-house. With the arrival of the first Jews from Hungary, the ovens are running day and night. On that 26th of May 1944, more than 10,000 people are driven into the 5 gas chambers at Auschwitz-Birkenau in a single day. Fairly close to the crematories 4 and 5 with their gas chambers and ovens, the so-called central sauna, also called the bathhouse by the camp inmates. It's the destination for those who have been selected for forced labor. It's possible that these photographs too were shot by Bernhard Walter, although it's not 100% certain. The entry opens onto a single large room. The women are ordered to strip naked. Then they have to walk along a corridor into another room where their hair is cut.
Then the next station, men are cutting body hair, pubic hair, everything, young women, just like that. You come from home, from your sheltered life, and that's what's done to you? Me too. I was just 13. I don't know whether you think, you don't think. Things are happening that's out of this world. So you finally reach, then you go take a shower.
This one is real. There is only this one photograph showing male prisoners. All that is left of their former lives are their shoes, and even this was a rare occurrence. In an adjoining room, they remain standing until they are dry. Then they are handed their prisoner's garb, which has been disinfected in large containers.
We got uniforms. We did get that sack of gray dress. And so you go and pick one up, and sometimes they let you keep your shoes and sometimes they don't. I think we were allowed to keep the shoes. And so this process is fast, but out of this world process. And you come out and you're transformed into a creature. You're no longer a person.
To Irene, the process seemed interminable. But how much time has actually passed between her arrival at the ramp and her present state? Stefan Hödler has carefully screened the photographs from Auschwitz and has found hints in the images of another transport.
Als Beispiel hätten wir einmal eine.
Here is a series of photos from a transport from Takovo.
Und wir haben Fotos von der Ankunft.
These show the arrival of the deportees at the new ramp,
bis hin zu Aufnahmen,
until finally showing those selected for forced labor in their striped prisoner's garb.
gestreiften Häftlingskleidung zeigen.
Since the rail tracks were laid out precisely along an east-western axis, the shadows allow the height of the sun and thereby the hour of the day to be determined. So the train on the right must have reached the camp between 11 a.m. and noontime. Faces of single deportees, such as that of Stefan Balajar, an apothecary on this transport, can be found again on the images showing them in their prisoner's garb. Again, the shadows give clear evidence about the hour of the day.
Nach dem Sonnenstand zu urteilen sind die Aufnahmen.
These photos were taken at about 5 p.m., judging by the height of the sun.
Den gesamten Ablauf von Ankunft des Transportes.
So we may assume a time span of a mere 4 to 5 hours between arrival and the gassing or the kitting out of the prisoners.
Setzen können. Mit 4.
Or in SS terms, the dispatching of a transport.
In der, wie es die SS sagte, Abfertigung eines Transports.
4 to 5 hours. According to this photograph, dated May the 26th, 1944, the selection took place at about 8 a.m. So the transport would have been what the SS euphemistically called dispatched between noon and 1 p.m. How many of those shown here were murdered during the next few hours?
Die Mordrate war extrem hoch.
The kill rate was extremely high.
Männer und auch ehemalige
Many former SS men who were interrogated and indicted after the war repeatedly stated that the murder rate had been as high as 75 or 80%.
Etwa 75 bis 80% gegeben habe.
At about 5:30 p.m., SS men like Bernhard Walter call it a day. He probably returns to the main camp, back into his office rooms at the ID section in Block 26. It's here that the photographs of the Hungarian project are being processed. The intention is to assemble them into a photo album. It's an idea of the Commandant Rudolf Höss, who wants to demonstrate his prowess as a taskmaster to his superiors. Walter chooses the photos and their captions accordingly. The actual work is done by inmates. The result, 56 pages containing almost 200 images. Even if the photographs don't show the agony in the gas chambers, they undeniably prove a crime against humanity on an unprecedented scale, which is quite the opposite of what the perpetrators had intended. According to a prisoner of the ID section, there were 15 copies of the album. It's safe to assume that SS Chief Heinrich Himmler received one of them, and that Höss proudly sent other copies to high-ranking figures of the SS. Only one of them has survived. It's kept at Yad Vashem, Israel's memorial site of the Holocaust. Historians are pretty sure about its original proprietor.
Mit hoher Wahrscheinlichkeit handelt es sich dabei die Kopie von Bernhard Walter.
It's highly probable that it was the personal copy of Bernhard Walter, which he kept for himself as the man who had been the key figure in the realization of the project.
Hauptakteur angefertigt hat.
There are several hints to that point.
Es sprechen verschiedene Punkte dafür. Zum einen,
first, the album had been used before. The original photos had been taken out, and new glue was applied for this version, which explains the inferior quality. This isn't a copy that would have been presented to Himmler. The overall look is just too bad.
Also viel zu schlecht.
At Auschwitz-Birkenau, the inmates' day of 12 hours forced labor ends at 6 p.m. After roll call, they have to enter their barracks. Once locked up, no one is allowed outside. For an SS man, there are several ways to spend his time off duty. Bernhard Walter may go home to his flat, merely 500 meters from the main camp, to spend the evening with his wife and children. But garrison life at Auschwitz holds other distractions too. There are comrades, male and female, who often convene for private celebrations. For instance, at a birthday party for the second photographer, Ernst Hoffmann. A snapshot of him, possibly made by Walter, as he's not in the frame. His presence at the occasion is ascertained by the birthday present. A booklet made up of caricatures of the guests. There is Joseph Erber, who works as a dispatcher at the ramp, nicknamed the Ladies' Man or the Booze Mixer. He will be sentenced to life after the war. Or Vera Navrat, called the beauty queen who loves photographers, an allusion to her fling with Ernst Hoffmann. And finally, Bernhard Walter, the excellent companion and great joker, even if he neither drinks nor smokes, as is added as an ironic afterthought. Mass murderers having a party.
Und es mutet schon etwas unwirklich an, wenn
it may seem surreal to see people celebrating and laughing as if they were leading a carefree existence far from any war,
quasi ein
when around them people were systematically killed, and when, on the other hand, German troops were in full retreat on all fronts, especially since, in those final days of 1944, defeat was right around the corner.
Gerade Ende 1944 klar ist, dass die Niederlage relativ kurz bevorsteht.
On the 27th of January 1945, the camp is liberated by the Red Army without any military resistance. The Soviet soldiers come upon harrowing proofs of mass murder, which the fleeing SS had been unable to remove. And they come upon living witnesses. 6,000 debilitated inmates who had been too weak for the forced marches on which their comrades were driven westward by the SS. Most Auschwitz survivors would be liberated from other camps only months later. Prior to their flight, the SS has blown up the crematories and the gas chambers. Bernhard Walter is among the last to leave Auschwitz in January 1945, after more than 4 years of duty at the camp. along with the camp staff and many inmates, he ends up in the Harz Mountains at another concentration camp called Mittelbau-Dora. It's an underground production site for V-2 missiles, which makes extensive use of forced laborers. In April 1945, this site too must be evacuated in a hurry. In the general turmoil, Bernhard Walter leaves his copy of the Auschwitz album behind.
Es ist stark davon auszugehen, dass
We must assume that, for reasons unknown to us, he didn't take his copy along.
aus Gründen, die wir nicht kennen, zurückgelassen hat. Eine Vermutung ist,
One guess is that when Nordhausen, the city close to the camp, was heavily bombed in early April 1945, most of the SS fled in haste,
ist zum überwiegenden Teil
and that due to that, the album may simply have been overlooked.
Flucht.
Otherwise, this historical source would have been destroyed.
Das wäre eine Quelle, die ansonsten vernichtet worden wäre.
Of the 8 members of the Vogel family, only Irene and her elder sister Serena survived the ordeal. In 1947, they emigrate to the USA. Irene marries, becomes a teacher and a mother of 3. Today she lives near Washington, D.C., where she lectures at the Holocaust Museum on her Auschwitz experience. Especially on that day in May 1944, when she lost most of her family at the ramp of Auschwitz. A day which has marked her for life.
People ask me to write. I don't want to write. It's my writing would be very, very dark. I would not be very happy to identify the human race with any kind of respect. And yet I'm not, I have to modify that. I don't go around hating everybody I meet, and I have friends, and I do trust in general. But mankind as a whole, it's quite an animal, a cruel animal.
Bernhard Walter ends up in British captivity. In May 1947, he's extradited to Poland and put on trial in Krakow, together with several other SS men from Auschwitz. At another trial, his former boss, Rudolf Höss, the initiator of the album, is sentenced to death and executed by hanging. Walter is sentenced to 3 years in prison. He returns to his hometown in Bavaria in 1950. In 1964, Walter is summoned as a witness at the Frankfurt Auschwitz trials. Although he isn't indicted, he denies everything. He says he hadn't noticed any killings and that he merely wants to leave all this behind.
I mean, yes, I was at Auschwitz. I faced a people's tribunal at Auschwitz, at Krakow, that is. I thought I'd done my time. And now, after 19 years, well, actually since 1959, time and again, one gets reminded of this place, Auschwitz.
Since his photographs are presented as evidence, Walter is questioned by the judge.
And on these, there are rail cars.
I took these. That was right at the beginning.
It was you who took these pictures.
Yes, I took these too.
Yet he shows no signs of guilt.
You just said you personally took this picture.
I personally didn't kill anyone. I had a clear conscience, basically. But the depression and the public exposure of having been there, that one had been part of that lot, that caused a certain mental strain.
Ein schlechtes Gewissen kommt da nicht raus.
There are no signs of a bad conscience here.
Sie wollen nicht mit den Fragen
These men don't want to be pestered by questions.
dass sie nicht mehr daran denken müssen und die
They're happy
Fragen
to have put all that behind them.
aufwühlen, bei denen
And
sie
now
eigentlich
these questions would stir up memories they were glad to have dispensed with.
aber etwas wie ein offenes Bekenntnis zur
Only
Reue.
a few have delivered a frank confession or words of repentance.
Wenige nach 1945 geliefert. Die Mehrheit
Most of them managed or seem to have managed a more or less smooth return into society after the war,
hat relativ problemlos, wenn sie nicht juristisch
at
verfolgt
least
worden,
those who were not prosecuted.
sich wieder in die Nachkriegsgesellschaft eingefunden.
The photographer of Auschwitz dies in 1979 without having to face any further legal consequences. Of the SS men who served in Auschwitz and who survived the war, only 1 in 8 was ever sentenced for his deeds. A mere 800 convictions for the murder of more than 1 million people at Auschwitz.